Now we're going to bring in Dan Hartford. He's been researching Zwelihle and the dynamics of the conflict in the area. Good to have you with us, Dan. What do you make of what is happening there and why?
Jane, I think a lot of this issue, I mean, two things that are emerging out of our research that we're seeing. The one is a big question around belonging and identity in Hermanus. And it's a question that a lot of residents in Zwelihle have been expressing around not feeling that they belong in that space. And so that's something that is a prominent aspect of the research that's emerging. Another is around legitimate community grievances. And the elected officials in Zwelihle and in the municipality that are elected to serve that community, there's a huge breakdown in trust between the community and those officials. And so in the vacuum that's been created, there has emerged a group like Zwelihle Renewal, which has articulated these community grievances, rightly or wrongly, but they best capture at the moment, at this time, the
Do you think this group is being addressed or seen in the context of what's happening there?
Sorry, Jen, I'm struggling with the earpiece. Could you just say that again?
You were talking about the youth coming to the forefront and having the negotiations and basically leading the push for change. How are they being seen there?
I think that's very contested. You will speak to some people, and there's great support for the youth that are leading that community. You'll speak to other people, and they'll say that they feel intimidated. So I think that question is very much contentious and up for discussion. That they are the group that is currently best articulating community grievances, I think that's not up for discussion.
And if they are described as merely protesters, that's not going to help them get them what they want, is there, if there's such blowback from the neighbors, particularly in Hermanus?
If they're described as traitors?
As purely as protesters, rather than people with legitimate grievances.
I mean, if they're described as protesters, I think protesters have legitimate grievances. The issue that we've been seeing is that they've been described as criminals, as thugs, and as terrorists. Up until quite recently, the narrative on that has changed. So I think it's important that when we have these conversations around protest in South Africa, and especially when we look at what's happening in Hermanus as a very extreme and acute microcosm of the pressures that are facing many South African towns and cities, then we need to have that conversation sensitively and understand that to criminalize and to delegitimize a community that has very real grievances is a reckless move on the part of our premier, for one, and the leadership in the province. And up until just the beginning of this week, I think that narrative of hostage and terrorist predominated this discussion, and now we're starting to see that actually there's a lot more to this.
All right, thank you for that, Dan Hartford, a researcher with the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Now let's take you back live now to Hermanus. The executive mayor of the Overstrand municipality, Dudley Coetzee, is there. Very good to have you with us, Mayor. Describe to us what you see as going on and what the problem is.
Jane, I take it that you're referring to Zwelihle. We've had civil unrest in the area for quite a while now. It started months ago, and the issue at that stage was housing. The current unrest revolved around a fence that was erected at the request of the Ward 12, which is a Zwelihle Ward Committee, that a safe playing area should be created for the children of Zwelihle. And there is sufficient space on the road reserve down Skulphoek Road for such play areas to be created. We agreed that it was a reasonable request, and funds were made available following a public participation meeting that took place in Ward 12 during February of this year. That fence was then erected.
But that was incredibly insensitive because of the concerns raised about land and the outpourings over that. What I'm hearing is that the wards don't speak to those in Zwelihle, so they don't actually know what is going on, and the majority didn't support this.
Jane, that information is absolutely inaccurate. The ward committees, there are 3 wards in Zwelihle. Ward 12 is the area along Skulphoek, and the ward committee has 10 members in addition to the ward councillor, and each member represents an organisation or a group of people. And it was a public meeting that requested and approved the fact that they would require this fence. And the fence was simply there to stop children from running across the road at any given place. And there were then specific pedestrian crossing areas allowed within this fence. The grouping in Zwelihle that refers to themselves as Zwelihle Renewal then saw this as a divide between the black people in Zwelihle and the white people in Sandpaai, which is absolute nonsense, because there's in fact a fence on the other side of the road. It was purely there for the protection of the people if we could have erected the play park.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to jump in again. I mean, we're looking at apartheid all over again, aren't we? I mean, we've got a fence dividing the communities.
No,
people say they're not getting their land. They're getting their land. If they do get it, it's taking an incredibly long time. Those living in Hermanus don't want them anywhere near them. They're living in absolute squalor in Zwelihle.
At the moment, unfortunately, the conditions in Zwelihle are not good. But it's because of the civil unrest that has taken place there over the past 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, it's because they are unhappy. They don't feel that they are benefiting from the community around them. They are protesting at their disparities. They're protesting at the way they've been treated.
The reasons that they protest continue changing. It started with housing, it then became the fence, it then became the police, it then became they wanted the release of the people that had been arrested by the police, and then from there they moved it to the fact that, according to them, the budget was not discussed with them in a public participation process.
So you can't blame them for getting angry for all of those reasons you listed.
Pardon?
I said you can't blame them for getting angry for all of those reasons that you listed. Okay, let's talk about the police. You mentioned the police. There have been horrific stories about the way they've been dealing with the residents there. I don't know if you heard, I guess, a little bit earlier on, but how they were shooting tear gas at them consistently. Some people have died because of the tear gas, old people, even children. Why that level of brutality towards these people living there?
Okay, Jane, I'm afraid that question you have to ask to the police and not to me. We've unfortunately not been able to go into Zwelihle for the duration of this unrest. And no one's been able to come out of Zwelihle.
I know, because it's been under lockdown.
The instigators of the violence have prevented the people from coming out. They've prevented them from going to work, they've prevented the children from going to school, and they've prevented people from even going to hospital who's needed medical attention. So we've not been able to get in. We've not been able to send our staff in to remove refuse.
But sorry, with respect, you would think as mayor you should know what's going on. I mean, why are you not speaking to the police? Why are you not finding out what's going on there?
Jane, law and order and the maintenance of law and order is the mandate of the South African Police Services. And particularly when the public order police take control of an area, they are in command. We are speaking to the police and we are informed about what is going on. But as the mayor, I am not in a position to give any instructions whatsoever to the police. I have no line authority over the police. I don't even have an oversight role over the police. The Premier in the province has an oversight role, but not even she has any line authority over the South African police. It's a national government mandate.
Okay, let's leave it there. Dudley Coetzee, very good to talk to you. Obviously, we're going to be keeping an eye on this story. Polls open in Zimbabwe in just a few days, but as the countdown is on, that country's president is calling for his strongest opponent to be thrown behind bars. Tonight, we'll head live to Harare with the latest.